April 8, 2006. It's a sunny morning in the small town of Ontario, Canada. The residents have started waking up and getting busy with their daily activities. Russell Steele, a local farmer, and his wife Mary owned a peaceful small farm in the Elgin County countryside. Suddenly their phone rang. They had no idea that this one phone call contained something so gruesome that it is going to shake the entire nation. It was their neighbor Forbes William on the other side. He informs them about an automobile that's parked in their cornfield. When the Steeles went to check out what's happening, never in their worst nightmare did they imagine that they would find cars loaded with 8 dead bodies. The Steeles immediately alerted the authorities upon discovering the bodies because the last time they were seen alive was when they were approaching the farm of Wayne Kellestine, which was adjacent to their field. Wayne Kellestine immediately became a key suspect. Now, who was this Wayne Kellestine? He is the former president of the Bandidos, and someone whose name would be etched in the criminal history of outlaw one-percenters for a long time after this incident. Detective Paul Beasley, the investigator in charge of the case, sought a judge and took permission to investigate Kellestine's farm. In the afternoon, 2 of Kellestine's friends, Kerry Morris and Eric Niss, showed up at his farm to provide an alibi for him and to get rid of the evidence at the same time. They came up with an alibi saying on the night of April 7th, they both were there with Kellestine at his farm, drinking, and they drank all night. So Kellestine couldn't possibly go out alone and kill 8 people so brutally single-handedly. Although the law enforcement sensed something wrong about their statement and kept an eye on them. Soon after that, they caught the 2 of them sitting in their vehicles, helping Kellestine clean out his barn. These heavily suspicious activities pushed Paul Beasley to dig into the past of Wayne Kellestine. Although the activities of Kellestine was no news to the police, or anyone as a matter of fact. Kellestine's rowdiness, his reckless disregard towards the law, made him feared by his enemies as an infamous legend of 1% outlaws. From the age of 18, he was already a seasoned criminal, diving deep into the vicious web of drug dealing, burglary, and even some unsolved murder cases had him as a suspect. Although without any gang protection from the notorious Canadian underworld, Wayne still was somewhat a vulnerable standalone figure, and hence in control. In 1977, the outlaw motorcycle clubs first expanded the branches in Canada through a club named Stan's Choice. Wayne immediately applies to join, but gets rejected as the club members saw him as someone who can't keep a low profile. He was always drawing the attention of police towards him, painting the target on his own back, and was already on the hit list of law enforcement. Outlaw MCs didn't want to risk taking someone like that. That didn't stop Wayne. In 1982, he formed a puppet club of the Outlaws and named it the Holocaust Club. A lot of outlaw motorcycle clubs raised their concerns about the name. Hence, in 1988, Wayne changed it to the Annihilators Club. His sick choice of the club names already portray his twisted nature and mentality. Wayne had a bad temper, which kept getting in his way of gaining popularity again and again. In 1998, an outlaw member pressed charges against him saying that Wayne shot him. Although the charges were dropped later on, Wayne was now a person of interest in the eyes of police. You will be surprised to know, April 2006 was not the first time police came to Kellestine's doorsteps. In 1999, police carried out an operation against the Annihilator Club and outlaws called the Bandidos and raided Kellestine's farm. They found Wayne drunk, high, and firearms scattered all around him inside his farmhouse. He was arrested immediately and the firearms were seized, but his story was far from over. By the time Wayne was released from prison, the world of outlaws around him had taken a drastic turn. The Hells Angel had risen into power. A lot happens after Wayne gets released. He gets banned from the Outlaws. Hells Angel offers him to join their club, but he rejects them, making them his enemy. Then he joined forces with Bandidos and continues with his heinous activities. Wayne's history was enough for Paul to persuade his suspicions against Wayne. Forensic team went to examine the Kellestine farm. By the month of May, police discovered the charred keys to the homes and apartments of the 8 murder victims, along with a visiting card that had the name Onikos on the murder victims' computer company. Under the fireplace, Constable Al Dubrow found a gun stash owned by Kellestine containing 18 firearms in total. Ballistics discovered some of these firearms were the same ones used in the murders. On one of the handguns, microscopic traces of blood were discovered. DNA test showed that the blood came from George Kriarakis, Jamie Flans, Paul Sinopoli, George Jessom, and Frank Salerno, people whose bodies were discovered in the car. The news spread like wildfire in the media, and they were quick to point finders at Hell's Angels, as they had a long-lasting rivalry with the Bandidos. The media using the term Shedden Massacre was deeply upsetting to the villagers of Shedden. Later, Wayne Kellestine was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. The Shedden Massacre was the most gruesome biker war in history. Yet, till this date, no one has a clear idea about what exactly happened. How was the flow of events? Even the outlaw clubs or any motorcycle clubs are clueless till date about it. But based on multiple interviews, interrogation, and public information of the police investigation, you can get a rough picture of it. Wayne Kellestine became obsessed with the thought of gaining control over the US-based biker gang's Canadian business and making profitable trade of methamphetamine. It was only possible by removing a majority of Toronto members, so Kellestine planned to finish them off for good and then portray the Hell's Angel for the killing. The Toronto Bandido gang members were quite intimidating and powerful, but they lacked in terms of financial stature. They didn't have any clubhouse yet. All their meetings used to take place in the basement of a Greek restaurant. So when they were invited to the Kellestine farm for a gathering on April 7, 2006, they happily agreed to go. Around 10:30 p.m. they reached the farm and were received with a warm welcome. Wayne and his associates indulge in banters and light-hearted conversations. All in all, it was a friendly gathering. Suddenly, Michael Sandom came in with a firearm in military style. Brett Gardner was keeping an eye on the police radio scanners, and circling the barn with shotguns and rifles was Dwight Mushy, the proprietor of a nightclub in Winnipeg, Marcelo Aravina, skilled with mixed martial art, and a homeless guy named Frank Mather, who had a long list of criminal records, and a Winnipeg biker MH were assisting him. Among all the victims, only Raposo had a shotgun. When he realized that it was an ambush, he fired his shotgun at Sandom, which hit him in the chest. But unfortunately, Sandom was wearing a bulletproof vest, so the pallets were reflected. Sandom returned fire immediately and killed Raposo. The rest of them ran towards the barn door, but Kellestine was waiting for them there with his revolver. He fired shots one after another. George Jessom, John Musedre, Frank Salerno, Paul Sinopoli, Jamie Flans, Michael Trota, and Louis Raposo were killed on the spot. After shooting them all, Kellestine ordered them to load their bodies in their cars. Noon was willing to drive Musedre's car since its driver's seat was soaked in blood. They loaded the bodies in the SUV and used a tow truck to pull the car away. The heavy body of Sinopoli wasn't fitting in the SUV with the other corpses and almost rolled over and fell down multiple times. Kellestine's plan was to take Highway 4001 and dump the bodies at Hell's Angel stronghold at Kitchener, since he planned on pinning the murders on the Hell's Angel, although he didn't have enough gas in his vehicle. Hence, the killers were forced to dump the bodies at the farmer's cornfield along with the SUVs. After Kellestine was arrested, MH had a meeting with Constable Timothy Diak and offered to turn in the evidence instead of going to prison like the rest of the killers, since he claimed not to be directly associated with the killings. He requested $75,000 and freedom from prosecution in exchange for his statement and evidence. Police fixed a deal of $1,300 per month, freedom from prosecution, and rent. MH became the undercover agent for the police and started conversing with Mushi and Aravina while wearing a wire. He found out it's easy to make Mushi talk by telling him how Sandom was boasting about killing 3 among the 8 men in the underworld circle, and Mushi gave a clear statement of the killings that night. Meanwhile, Sandom, who disappeared shortly after the murder, was spotted cleaning half of his car's interior, getting the tire changed, etc. Detectives found his old tires beside a rural country road and figured that they were the perfect match to the tire marks found from Kellestine Farm to the field. This case went on for 3 long years. Afterward, the Bandido members involved in it were charged with 44 counts of first-degree murders and 4 counts of manslaughter. Although the case was closed, the gory details of it still send chills to the spine of every Canadian. It was the most heinous crime of outlaw history, and the families of the victims will never be able to get over it. April 7, 2006 will forever be a dark night for them.